At 11:32 p.m. on July 22, 2015, a terrified 12-year-old boy named Daniel Bever whispered into his phone, "Help, my brother is attacking my family." Within minutes, that same brother would stab Daniel to death while he was still on the line with 911. But this wasn't a sudden burst of violence. This was the culmination of over a year of meticulous planning by two brothers who wanted to kill their entire family, then embark on a cross-country murder spree to surpass the Columbine shooters and achieve internet fame. What you're about to hear happened in suburban Oklahoma, in a quiet neighborhood where children rode bikes and families attended church together. The perpetrators weren't strangers or career criminals. They were 18-year-old Robert Bever and his 16-year-old brother Michael. And their ultimate goal wasn't just to murder their parents and 5 siblings. They wanted to kill 500 people and become the most notorious mass murderers in American history. Welcome to our investigation into one of the most disturbing family massacres in recent memory. If cases like Chris Watts or the Menendez brothers captured your attention, this story will leave you questioning everything you think you know about family bonds and the dark corners of internet culture. Make sure to subscribe because stories like this need to be told, and the warning signs need to be recognized. This all took place in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, a peaceful suburb just outside Tulsa with a population of about 100,000. It's the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked and neighbors know each other by name. The Bever family had lived there for years in a modest 2-story home on Magnolia Court. To anyone driving by, it looked like the perfect American family home, complete with a white picket fence and well-maintained lawn. The Bever family appeared to embody traditional values. David Bever, 52, worked in information technology, while his wife April, 44, homeschooled their 7 children. They were deeply religious, attending a local church regularly, and kept largely to themselves. Their children ranged in age from 2-year-old Autumn to 18-year-old Robert. The family rarely interacted with neighbors, but when they did, they seemed polite and well-mannered. But behind the closed doors of 709 Magnolia Court, something far more disturbing was taking shape. Robert and Michael Bever weren't just typical homeschooled teenagers. They had become obsessed with mass murder, spending countless hours researching previous killers and developing their own twisted ideology. Robert Bever was the mastermind. Intelligent but increasingly isolated, he had developed grandiose fantasies about becoming famous through violence. He studied the Columbine shooters, the Aurora theater shooting, and other mass casualty events with the dedication of a doctoral student. But Robert wasn't content to simply admire these killers from afar. He wanted to surpass them all. Michael, 2 years younger, looked up to his older brother with the kind of hero worship that would prove deadly. Where Robert was calculating and methodical, Michael was eager to please and desperate for approval. Together, they formed a partnership that would tear their family apart in the most literal sense. Here's what makes this case particularly disturbing. The brothers didn't just wake up one day and decide to kill. They planned this massacre for over a year, purchasing weapons, ammunition, and tactical gear. They bought 3,000 rounds of ammunition, body armor, and multiple knives. They even purchased surveillance equipment because they wanted to record their crimes and upload them to YouTube. Think about that for a moment. While their parents were working to provide for the family, while their younger siblings were playing games and doing schoolwork, Robert and Michael were methodically planning to murder them all. And their motivation wasn't money, wasn't abuse, wasn't mental illness in any traditional sense. They wanted to be famous. The brothers had developed a detailed plan that extended far beyond their family home. After killing their parents and siblings, they intended to drive to neighboring states and continue killing random people until they reached their goal of 500 victims. They had studied other mass killers and believed they could exceed their body counts while documenting everything for social media. But let me tell you about the victims, because they deserve to be remembered as more than just statistics in their brother's twisted fantasy. David Bever was a quiet man who worked hard to support his large family. April was devoted to homeschooling and raising their children according to their religious beliefs. Daniel, at 12, was old enough to understand what was happening to his family and brave enough to call for help. Christopher, just 7 years old, was described by relatives as sweet and innocent. 5-year-old Victoria was the baby girl of the family, full of energy and laughter. Crystal, 13, was quiet but strong-willed. And 2-year-old Autumn was barely more than a toddler, just learning to speak in full sentences. These weren't just names in a news report. They were a real family with inside jokes, birthday traditions, and dreams for the future. Dreams that 2 family members decided to destroy for internet notoriety. What questions are you asking yourself right now? Are you wondering how parents could miss such obvious warning signs? Are you questioning how 2 teenagers could plan mass murder for over a year without anyone noticing? Share your thoughts in the comments because understanding how this happened is crucial to preventing it from happening again. The attack began around 11:30 p.m. on July 22, 2015. Most of the family was asleep when Robert and Michael began their assault. They started with their parents, stabbing both David and April multiple times in their bedroom. The parents' wounds were so severe that investigators later said they died within minutes. But the brothers weren't finished. They moved through the house systematically, attacking each sibling. When they reached Daniel's room, the 12-year-old somehow managed to call 911. The recording of that call is heartbreaking. You can hear Daniel whispering, trying not to alert his attackers, desperately hoping someone would come to save his family. "Help! My brother is attacking my family," Daniel told the 911 operator. Those were among his last words. While he was still on the phone, one of his brothers found him and stabbed him to death. Crystal Bever was in another room when she heard the commotion. When she came out to investigate, she found her brothers covered in blood, holding knives. Instead of running, instead of hiding, Crystal's first instinct was to ask what had happened. That question saved her life because it gave her a split second to recognize the danger and react. Both brothers attacked Crystal, stabbing her multiple times in the arms, back, and neck. But somehow, despite losing significant amounts of blood, Crystal survived. She would later testify that as she lay there, bleeding and struggling to stay conscious, she could hear her brothers moving through the house, continuing their attack on the rest of the family. 7-year-old Christopher and 5-year-old Victoria were both stabbed to death in their beds. The brutality of their murders was so extreme that veteran police officers later said it was the worst crime scene they had ever encountered. But here's something that haunts investigators to this day. The brothers had planned to kill 2-year-old Autumn as well, but for unknown reasons, they spared her. Some experts believe they ran out of time. Others think even these cold-blooded killers couldn't bring themselves to murder a toddler. Autumn slept through the entire massacre, waking up the next morning to a horror no child should ever witness. When police arrived at 11:52 p.m., just 20 minutes after Daniel's initial call, they found Crystal barely alive and Autumn unharmed. 5 family members were dead, and 2 teenage boys were nowhere to be found. But Robert and Michael hadn't fled far. They were found hiding in a wooded area behind their home, still wearing the tactical gear they had purchased for their planned killing spree. When officers approached them, they surrendered without resistance, almost as if they were disappointed their grand plan had been cut short. What investigators discovered next revealed the true scope of the brothers' ambitions and sent shockwaves through law enforcement. In the house, police found detailed plans for their cross-country murder spree, including maps marking potential targets, lists of weapons and ammunition, and what can only be described as a manifesto outlining their desire for fame. The brothers had been studying mass killers for months, taking notes on their methods and trying to determine how to exceed their victim counts. They had researched the Columbine shooters, the Virginia Tech killer, and others, treating these tragedies like instruction manuals rather than horrific crimes. During police interrogations, both brothers showed a disturbing lack of remorse. Robert, the older brother, was calm and calculated, describing the murders as if he were discussing a school project. Michael appeared more emotional but seemed primarily concerned with how his actions would be perceived rather than showing genuine grief for his dead family members. Think about the mindset required to plan your family's murder for over a year. Consider the level of deception needed to live with people you're planning to kill, to eat dinner with them, to interact with them normally while secretly purchasing weapons to use against them. What do you think drives someone to that point? I'd love to hear your theories in the comments. The evidence against the brothers was overwhelming. Beyond the crime scene itself, investigators found the flash drives containing their detailed plans, receipts for the weapons and ammunition, and even Michael's disturbing artwork depicting violence and death that he had been creating for months before the murders. During Michael's interrogation, he drew pictures for investigators showing how the attack unfolded. These drawings were so detailed and emotionless that they became key evidence in demonstrating premeditation. Michael drew diagrams of the house, marked where each family member was located, and even illustrated the weapons used in each attack. Robert's interrogation revealed the true scope of their ambitions. He calmly explained to detectives that killing his family was just the beginning. He described plans to steal vehicles, travel to other states, and continue killing until they had achieved their goal of 500 victims. He talked about wanting to be more famous than previous mass killers and expressed frustration that their plan had been interrupted. The legal proceedings that followed were as disturbing as the crime itself. Robert eventually pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Michael's case was more complicated because of his age at the time of the murders. His defense team argued that he was under his older brother's influence and wouldn't have committed these crimes alone. However, the evidence showed that Michael was an enthusiastic participant in the planning and execution of the murders. After a lengthy trial, Michael was convicted on all counts and also sentenced to life in prison without parole. The jury rejected arguments that he was simply following his brother's lead, finding instead that he was a willing and eager participant in the family massacre. Crystal Bever, the sole survivor, showed remarkable strength throughout the legal proceedings. Despite the trauma she had endured, she testified against her brothers, providing crucial details about the attack and helping prosecutors secure their convictions. But the story doesn't end with the convictions. In 2019, Robert Bever made headlines again when he attempted to attack 2 guards at the prison where he's serving his sentence. He fashioned a weapon from materials in his cell and tried to stab the guards during a routine cell inspection. This attack resulted in additional charges and demonstrated that Robert remains dangerous even while incarcerated. The Bever family home on Magnolia Court stood empty for months after the murders. Eventually, the community decided it couldn't remain as a constant reminder of the tragedy. The house was demolished, and the lot remains empty to this day. Crystal Bever has worked to rebuild her life, though she carries physical and emotional scars from that night. 2-year-old Autumn, who slept through the massacre, is now being raised by relatives who are working to help her heal from the trauma of losing most of her family. This case raises disturbing questions about the influence of violent media and internet culture on young people. The Bever brothers weren't motivated by traditional factors like abuse, mental illness, or financial desperation. They were driven by a desire for fame and notoriety that they believed mass murder would provide. Their case has been studied by criminologists and psychologists trying to understand how social media and internet culture might be creating new types of killers. The brothers' obsession with achieving online fame through violence represents a troubling evolution in criminal motivation. What's perhaps most terrifying about this case is how ordinary the Bever family appeared from the outside. There were no obvious warning signs that neighbors or extended family members recognized. The parents weren't abusive. The family wasn't struggling financially. By all external appearances, this was a normal, religious family living a quiet life in suburban Oklahoma. But behind closed doors, 2 teenagers were methodically planning the most heinous crime imaginable, motivated not by desperation or mental illness, but by a twisted desire for internet fame. They studied previous killers like students preparing for exams, constantly refining their plans to maximize casualties and media attention. The Bever case serves as a stark reminder that evil can hide behind the most innocent facades. It challenges our assumptions about family bonds and forces us to confront the reality that sometimes the greatest danger comes from within our own homes. As we conclude this investigation, I want you to think about the warning signs that might have been missed. Are there young people in your community who seem obsessed with violence or mass killers? Are there family members whose behavior has changed in concerning ways? Sometimes speaking up, even when we're not sure, can save lives. The Bever brothers achieved their goal of becoming infamous, but not in the way they intended. Instead of being celebrated as criminal masterminds, They're remembered as cold-blooded killers who destroyed their own family for the most shallow of motivations. Their victims, meanwhile, are remembered with love and grief by a community that still struggles to understand how such evil could exist in their quiet suburb. What aspects of this case do you find most disturbing? Do you think social media and internet culture played a role in radicalizing these young men? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more investigations into cases that challenge everything we think we know about human nature and family bonds.